Since the dedication of the Shrine of Remembrance in 1934, servicemen and women, veterans, descendants of veterans and their friends have assembled in this place, this very special place, to reflect on the tragedy of war and the hard-fought campaigns involving servicemen and women from Australia. Most importantly, remember those veterans that are no longer with us. Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Commander Jan Gallagher, and along with Commander Terry Makings, we are Shrine Governors. And on behalf of the trustees, the governors and the wider Shrine family, I'd like to welcome you to the Shrine today and thank you for participating in this service.
Thank you, Jan. On behalf of the N-Class Destroyer Association and the Naval Commemoration Committee Victoria, welcome to this service of remembrance, a service to remember those that served in N-Class Destroyers during World War II. Today we'll hear from Lieutenant Brendan Galanza. Is that close, Brendan? Not very. Royal Australian Navy, compliments of HMAS Cerberus. So welcome, Brendan. We're very pleased to have you with us today. We also welcome other veterans for whom we owe so much. And we're grateful for the support of the descendants that are in this particular place at the moment. And in the main, descendants are very important to these services because if we don't maintain the connection between the families and this particular service, then at the end of the day, they may not occur. So it's important that we encourage everybody with a connection to military service to appreciate their family connection and recognise the importance of their participation. So with respect to descendants, our thanks. Well, sadly, Guy the Marshal hasn't got the banner here at the moment, so that's a bit unfortunate. So Guy's obviously been held up, and it's a bit disappointing because his grandfather served in the N-Class Destroyers, and I served with his father, Chris the Marshal, in HMAS Stewart when he was the gunnery officer. So importantly, the things like the banner list the inherited battle honours that remind us of what they went through on a day-to-day basis. And you'll hear more about that from Brendan. Now we also have Lance Davis, and his father served in the destroyers during those dark days. But most importantly, we have Emily Davis with us, whose husband served in the N-Class Destroyers. So Emily, lovely to have you here today. And we thank everybody for participating. Now what we'll have is a reading, and that'll be done by Pete Johnston, who's the Vice President of the Naval Commemoration Committee of Victoria. So Pete.
Thank you, Terry. A reading. We offer our heartfelt thanks for the well-being of our Commonwealth, for the devoted lives of those who have made our people great and free, for deliverance from civil strife and bloodshed, from the craft and power of foreign foes, and for the sacred trust of the seas. May we treasure our great inheritance. We give thanks for all who have sacrificed their lives in the service of our country at sea. May their sacrifice strengthen our resolve to build communities of trust and inclusion. Grant that they may be freed from depression and bitterness, and find relief for all their distress and pain in the knowledge of our care and support. We are thankful for the community support towards those serving in the Australian Defence Force at home and overseas. Give them courage and comfort in danger, patience in waiting, and discipline in the just use of force. Help us to seek for all people the freedom to live in peace and with compassion. May we be worthy of their service.
Thank you, Pete. I now invite Lieutenant Brendan Galanza, Royal Australian Navy, who 10 years in the Royal Australian Navy as a warfare officer, now at Cerberus, training our young sailors so that they might in fact maintain our warships in the best possible state. So, Brendan, please come forward.
Thanks, Terry. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lieutenant Brendan Giolans, and I'm a Maritime Warfare Officer within the Royal Australian Navy. As Terry said, I'm currently posted down at HMAS Cerberus, where I'm undertaking the role of Seamanship Training Manager within the Maritime Skills Training Centre. I'd first like to thank members from the Shrine and also the Naval Commemoration Committee for giving me the wonderful opportunity today to deliver this address, and I also welcome the family and descendants of the N-class destroyers. I'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where we gather today, the Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their leaders, past, present, and emerging. I'd also like to pay my respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples who have contributed to the defence in times of peace and war. I'm honoured to give this address commemorating the loss of HMAS Nestor, together with 4 of her gallant crew, exactly 82 years ago on the 16th of June, 1942. To be perfectly honest, prior to committing to take up the opportunity to be a guest speaker today, my knowledge of the N-class destroyers and their role within the Second World War was very limited. During my research on some of the key roles of the N-class destroyers, it became apparent that some of my own family heritage was highlighted. Not specifically to the N-class destroyers, but more so to their role in assisting the small island nation of Malta in the Mediterranean, which is where my father and his family is from. I still remember when my late grandfather and father used to tell me stories of the importance of Malta in World War II, and also to the immense courage and fortification shown by the Maltese people to assist defending their small country to the Germans and Italians. As a result of this, the George Cross was awarded to the island by King George VI. Learning history, especially defence history, is important as it helps us grow and also learn from mistakes, but also adapt to new ways. As a member of the Royal Australian Navy, I took this opportunity today unwillingly, as it presented me an opportunity to further develop my defence history and knowledge. The N-class destroyers were a flotilla of ships built for the British Royal Navy. Early in the Second World War, 5 were loaned to the Royal Australian Navy to be manned by Australian sailors. The Napier, Nestor, Nizam, Norman, and Nepal served in Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian Oceans. As today commemorates the anniversary of the loss of HMAS Nestor, my address will primarily focus on her. HMAS Nestor, the third of her class, was built along with her destroyer leader, Napier, at Fairfield's Clydeside Yard in Scotland. HMAS Nestor was commissioned on the 3rd of February 1941 by Commander George Stewart, Royal Australian Navy. This must have been an exciting, if cold and miserable time for most of her inexperienced crew. Many of these young men were reservists and few had ever seen action. After 3 weeks of trials, Nestor sailed from Greenock for the Royal Navy's northern base, situated at Scapa Flow, one of the bleakest spots in the kingdom. It did not disappoint as they arrived to a reception of snow and ice. However, they were enthusiastically greeted by the Rear Admiral, Sir Lewis Hamilton. The workup was brief, and they were soon escorting convoys to Iceland. Nestor was one of 4 destroyers accompanying the 18th Cruiser Squadron far into the Arctic Circle to 72 degrees north to intercept the German weather ship Munich. This small ship with her crew was captured intact, most importantly with her code books. With code books secured by a mystery man from Naval Intelligence, Nestor was dispatched at full speed to Scapa, with the mystery man flown to London for Bletchley Park to help break the Enigma code. A few days after this successful cloak and dagger episode, and only 3 months into the commission, Big Bill Stewart was relieved of his command. There were disciplinary concerns brought about by heavy drinking. The ship's medical officer, the remarkable 25-year-old reservist surgeon, Lieutenant Shane Watson, was prevailed upon to go ashore and appraise a flag officer of the situation. Marines were sent to remove 3 senior officers for court-martial. As a temporary measure, the captain of the depot ship, HMS Tyne, took command with a new First Lieutenant, Lieutenant George Crowley, Royal Navy appointed. A week later, Commander Alvord Rosenthal, Royal Australian Navy, assumed command of Nestor. Rosenthal, an experienced destroyer captain, had been standing by to take command of the HMAS Norman. There were no further incidents, and the crew, who were not disciplined, displayed restraints and worked enthusiastically under their new command. With troubles behind them, Nestor sailed with the home fleet to hunt the Bismarck, which had just sunk HMS Hood, with devastating loss of life. While the bigger ships, the battleship King George V, the carrier Victorious, and 4 cruisers ploughed on and eventually cornered their quarry, Nestor and 5 other destroyers were obliged to retire to Iceland to refuel. In company with 4 destroyers, Nestor next escorted the battleship Nelson to Gibraltar to join Admiral Somerville's Force H. Somerville had the finest ships the Navy could provide. They were charged with convoying 7 large and fast-armed merchantmen, taking essential supplies to the starving Maltese garrison. The convoy from Gibraltar, under cover of darkness and fog in the early hours of 21 July. In reduced visibility, the troop ship Leinster ran aground and was left behind. The following day, they were discovered by Italian submarines with 2 torpedoes passing under Nestor and narrowly missing Renown. Off Sardinia, they were fiercely attacked by high-level bombers and then torpedo bombers, but with its immense firepower, only 1 destroyer was sunk and 1 cruiser and another destroyer retired damaged. But the merchantmen remained intact. With the worst onslaught thought to be over and coming within range of air coverage from Malta, after dark, the heavy ships turned back for Gibraltar. However, later that night, they were again attacked by Italian E-boats, and one of the convoy, Sydney Star, with 500 troops aboard, fell astern. Nestor was dispatched and found the ship had been hit by torpedo and gunfire and was in danger of sinking. In darkness, a boat transfer would take forever. So at 3 a.m., Nestor secured alongside Sydney Star and within 1 hour took off all non-essential personnel. Nestor now, with 774 souls on board, led the stricken ship and, subject to more air attacks, eventually made the island of Malta. In helping save Malta, Commander Rosenthal was awarded his first DSO. Back to Gibraltar, and then more convoy duty to West Africa. On departing Bathurst in Gambia, Nestor prosecuted a suspected submarine contact. However, she suffered accidental damage when one of her depth charges detonated prematurely. This necessitated returning to Plymouth for repairs. It was then back up north to the Clyde, where Nestor was joined by her recently commissioned sister, Norman. On 15 December, when off Cape St. Vincent, a submarine was sighted on the surface. They closed and opened fire from A and B turrets before the targets emerged. She then made contact and attacked with depth charges. Afterwards, oil and debris was seen on the surface. Nestor is credited with sinking U-boat 127, earning Rosie a bar to his DSO. And who could forget the schoolie Richard Dick Fennessy, the master of plotting tables, who once he found a target could not be shaken off. For his efforts, he received a DSC. After her submarine adventure, Nestor sailed for Malta, arriving on Christmas Eve. It was onwards to Alexandria, where she met her sisters, Napier and Nizam. The 3 Ns transited the canal, then escorted the carrier Indomitable with 50 Hurricanes, reinforcements for the Malayan campaign. The fleet then assembled at Trincomalee, expecting to meet a full-scale Japanese attack. They were joined by Norman in February. Their numbers were severely depleted with the loss to Japanese air attacks of the carrier HMAS Hermes and her escorting destroyer HMAS Vampire. In April, all 4 Ns returned to the Mediterranean. Another operation was undertaken aimed at escorting 11 merchant ships through to Malta from the east. This was a risky operation with heavy losses anticipated while transiting Bomb Alley between Egypt and Crete. On 15 June 1942, There was no doubt about Nestor's ability, but her luck ran out when she was straddled and crippled by 3 1,000-pound bombs during a high-level air attack. 2 bombs exploded almost simultaneously, falling within feet on either side of the ship, and a third near her stern. The impact practically blew her out of the water and broke her back. She was holed amidships with water flooding into the number 1 boiler room. The boiler room was in semi-darkness and filling with oily water and dangerous superheated steam cascading everywhere. This did not stop the ship's medical officer, the indomitable Shane Watson, from entering the boiler room. He helped recover all 4 men, but none could be revived. Nestor was taken under tow, but the next day the decision was made to transfer her ship's company to HMS Javelin and confine the sinking ship to the deep. For his courageous efforts, Surgeon Lieutenant Watson was awarded the DSC. HMAS Nestor lived the life of the Greek hero whose name she proudly bore. She had a short life, matured in months rather than years. During some of the darkest days of World War II, she was always to be found near the centre of action. She fought gallantly alongside such famous ships as Ark Royal, Nelson, and Renown, and was never found wanting. Nestor was, of course, unique, being the only Australian warship never to sail in Australian waters. When HMS Javelin reached Alexandria, the Nestor survivors were disembarked and most drafted to other destroyers. Lieutenant Crowley was awarded the DSC and posted as First Lieutenant of HMAS Norman. He later rose to flag rank. Today, we remember and commemorate the loss of HMAS Nestor and pay tribute to those of her ship's company who lost their lives. These brave young men endured the winter treachery of the North Atlantic, the fierce ordeals of incessant warfare in the Mediterranean, and the uncertainties of entering into the Indian Ocean where the enemy had swept all before them. Let us remember stoker, Petty Officer Jake Brown Bulmer of Penguin, Tasmania, aged 28. Leading stoker Campbell Hill of Coolgardie, Western Australia, aged 24. Leading stoker Matthew Burns of the Royal Navy, and stoker Leslie Blight of Pingelly, Western Australia, aged just 19. Let us also remember those that gave the ultimate sacrifice during the Second World War. May they all rest in peace, lest we forget.
Thank you, Brendan. It's easy to overlook the fact that with all of that activity that they were involved in, just the stress that the crew would have been under every day, enemy ships, enemy aircraft, submarines, on a constant basis. So they did a phenomenal job. So at this point, the Shrine Guard will mount. And the Remembrance Party will now lay the wreaths. Lieutenant Giolans will lay a wreath on behalf of the Royal Australian Navy. Mrs. Emily Davis will lay a wreath on behalf of descendants of those that served in the N-class destroyers.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118
Mr Pete Johnston, Medal in the Order of Australia, member of the Geelong subsection of the Naval Association of Australia, will lay a wreath on behalf of the association. And Mr Chris Banfield, Secretary of the Naval Commemoration Committee Victoria, will lay a wreath on behalf of the committee. This poppy, the colour of the blood-stained battlefields of Europe, is a symbol of our dedication to the fallen and those that have passed on since. I invite you to place your poppy in the urn next to this. I now ask those who are able, please stand. Ode to our sailors. They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. Ode to the fallen. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Salute. lest we forget. Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Shrine Guard will dismount. Please be seated. Well, that concludes today's service. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you to all the descendants. Hopefully we'll see you next year, and any other descendants you might come across. Encourage them to come along as well to support those that made the supreme sacrifice and those that have fallen since. Thank you very much. And if you want a cup of coffee or tea in the Western Gallery, and Pete's provided 1 or 2 biscuits or sandwiches, so you're welcome to go to the Visitors Centre. See you there soon. Thanks, Brendan.